Hello and welcome to the Space Between Ideas. I'm Blaine Gates. Welcome back to building this software application with AI tools. And you might be wondering today, what are you talking about? You're not doing anything about building an application with tools. Um, well, I don't know. We're getting prepared. We're doing some preparatory work. And the main thing about preparatory work is, I mean, it depends. Like when people say vibe coding, are they talking about like just vibing, like just seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, like slowly building something, slowly doing something, slowly putting something together? Like there's some pretty interesting ideas about, like, because you watch a bunch of these YouTube videos, um um you're going to get the feeling like this whole uh vibe coding thing is not as easy as you think it is. Like for example, like, so I'm watching this YC video the other night. Well, I could just show you. I could just share my screen. So let's jump into my history. What did I do after I made that video yesterday? All right. So let's start sharing my screen from here. So there's this one guy, Jeremy Devs. I saw something interesting that he had done, and I kind of was looking at some of his videos, and then I went back to this guy Rob Shocks, just I don't know, to look at some stuff. And then look, so this is the video that I made. And then right after I watched that video, then I saw the new Y Combinator video, and they were talking about vibe coding. And then I clicked the Rich from APIs. I didn't actually watch any of it. Apparently, it's doing pretty good right now. 55,000 views. It's doing better than the YC video. But I didn't watch it. I just, I got enough on my plate. There's a million videos that promise that you can get rich, and it's like, yeah, it's just like I was in Hollywood back in 2000 and let's say 2015. I was there for a year. I went to the New York Film Academy to study filmmaking, and I also had like a private acting coach, and we were trying to put together something. And I wasn't really in the best state of mind. I just like, I'd left after being in China for 10 years and then Silicon Valley for 1 year and then watching my marriage break up. And then I'm in Hollywood. And yeah, trying to put things together. And they say that to become an overnight success takes 10 years, like at least 10 years, which means most people are never going to even come close to any kind of success in Hollywood. The successful actors and actresses, like they're working. They're like working a day in, day out for 10 years. It's like that Freakonomics book or whatever it's called, where it's like it takes 10 years, 10,000 hours to master something. Yeah, like to be successful, you have to focus on something and get really, really good at it. Anyways, so I noticed that like this dude, Matthew Berman. So the very next video, I think he also watched the Y Combinator video because the very next video he makes is cursor, vibe coding, the basics. He actually changed this what do you call it? Thumbnail, I think, because I think before it said windsurf. I think it said cursor and windsurf. Let's check if it has the. Yeah, you see, vibe coding tutorial best practices cursor windsurf. That's exactly what this young lady from Vibe from Y Combinator, she said they were like talking about like what is popular right now, and they said like cursor is popular and like windsurf is becoming more popular. And then this dude makes a video like the very next day called using the search term windsurf and anyways. I watched Greg's video. It was like garbage. I mean, it was obviously it's better than me, like better than what I'm doing. But like, you know, He could have edited it differently. Oh, I have another video. I have another channel where I teach French. Well, actually, I'm learning French. And then I had to copy and paste the title from yesterday. Anyways, what's the point? So the point is, I wanted to explain something about Tom's book. In the description below, you can see a link to Tom's book. And I know this looks really sketchy, right? Because it's just a PayHip link with Tom's name on it. But this is literally, I used this link to buy his book. So it's a little less sketchy. It's got like some, it's got his WordPress. But how do you actually like, how can you actually know it's his book and him? And how do you know what you're going to get from this PayHip link? Anyways, so I bought a digital copy of his book, and he gave me a physical copy of his book. If we look at the digital copy of his book, we can go to the, so if you want to buy this book, you can buy it. You can see here, it even has my email address at the top. I bought it October 2021. And if we go into the table of contents, you're going to see his direct outcomes checklists. When I met Tom in Silicon Valley back in 2013, before I got divorced, just after we left China to be in Silicon Valley, my ex-wife had a friend that was living in the area, so it was someone that she can communicate with, and they had a common language. And she was working for Google at the time, or maybe it was her. Yeah, her and her husband were both working for Google, and anyways, this is the subject of my study of like the project I've been working on for like the last since 2015, and extremely intensively working on it since, I would say, since 2020, but I started working on it basically in 2017. And these are his checklists. Now, I want to look at one of the ideas. Let's call it create insight. It's not create insight. I think it's before create insight. I don't know, it's after. So on this page, this is basically like a list of his checklists. See, you see it says direct outcomes checklists. And then here it's talking about typical activities. And here it's talking about endeavor elements. So Tom, his whole philosophy is based on these elements called effects, agendas, and potential. All right, so if we look at potential, what are we talking about? We're talking about when somebody has a vision for something what they want to accomplish in the future, then they need to be able to have access to some enough resources to be able to do something. Like the whole concept of potential is taking resources and then turning them into other resources from A to B. So we take some resources, then we have some processes, and then they turn into different types of resources, hopefully more valuable resources. And then Tom, there's like, so there's a checklist, it's called state resources, basically lists resource types. And you could use that checklist to consider your resources. It's been difficult to use that particular checklist with students. And I haven't found a lot of students out of 400 people. I didn't really find anybody who could use it. And it may have been because maybe I'm not good at presenting that information. But in general, that was not something that was really attracting the attention of students. If you buy this book, you can go to the chapter called State Resources, and then you can read about the history of like what happened, what was going on in Tom's life when he needed to use the ideas. And then he created this little checklist. Um, we're not going to do that right now. But you just go up to the table of contents, you click state resources, then you go down to the checklist. There'll be a in every single chapter. So these direct outcomes checklists, this represents all of the chapters and all of the thinking tools in his book. This is the methodology that he's presenting to the world. And I'm saying that involved resources, in my experience with 400 people and the types of people that I was talking to, we didn't find a great use for this resource, this checklist. Excite motivations. So excite motivations, it could be state purposes. So you see how state purposes, it is connected to choose plans. And then also there's a line, it brings it down to excite motivations. I think if you go to the checklist called state tendencies, it is a combination of these four checklists. So if you understand the work styles and you understand the purposes and then you understand the drive, drive is trying to understand the level of of uh, competitiveness, meaning how much effort somebody generally puts into their work and how much skill or knowledge or success they generally get when they put in that type of effort. We can call that competitiveness. So, like a pro athlete, they put in way more effort and they are way more skilled and they achieve way more success than non professional athletes in that endeavor. So, we could say they're more competitive. Styles, you can, so this is talking about the value chain of processes. And some people, they are stuck in the area where they didn't even create a process yet, or maybe they're just so haphazard and the process really isn't a very good process. And then you have other people who are extremely automated and they understand how to put tools together, how to connect tools together in order to get the right output. And one of those ways is just to hire people and then to put those people into teams. And another way is to buy tools. So there are different ways to automate processes. Most important is to understand how the process works. So if you're really good at understanding how processes work, and then you also have the ability to automate a lot of processes, and then you also know how to like shift down into into other gears. For example, okay, we have an automated process. We need to go back into A/B testing, or we're doing some A/B testing, but our A isn't really quite right. We need to go back down into haphazard, see if we can make some changes to that process. Then we can test it again against B, and then once we decide which one of those is the one we want, then we start using that process. And then can we automate that process? So it's all about processes. Purposes, I did a whole like 20 something video series on my YouTube channel here about state purposes. I went through all of the purposes. And the reason why, I mean, Tom could tell me to take it down because it's like I'm just taking all the pieces from his book directly and then explaining them. So it's all copyright information. I don't know if he would. I would recommend that he didn't because the thing is that most people they can't get through that chapter. Most people they start talking about it, they fall asleep. It took me 20 videos just to get through it. And what was the result of that whole experience? It was it was mainly to understand that you have to do things to work on your potential and you have to do things to create effects. You see, because the state purposes, it's also based on the endeavor elements. And my takeaway from that experience of making 20, excuse me, 20 videos was that there were areas in my life where I needed to work on my potential, and there were areas in my life where I needed to create effects. And in both of those cases, I needed to have like enough exposure to risk and also to have a great plan and also to understand what the goal is. And then I could work toward those two types of different things. And then inventiveness is the process for like how you actually get from idea to like implementing something. So you put all those together and yeah, so that's tendencies. You can understand the tendencies of that person or that organization. And if you can figure out their tendencies, like purposes, what drives them, and then how automated are their processes, and how much effort, how much gas do they have, and how skilled are they, And then are they able to actually put that into a product or a service? And are they able to do it over and over and over again until they find product market fit? That's tendencies. So it's interesting, but I'm not quite there yet, because I'm trying to build what's the first app? What's the first piece of software that I could release that people could use? Like, what is the minimal viable product? Now, I've created a lot of different structures of software that could use his checklists. And I know that from his perspective, he has one vision of how it's like you write in your endeavor and then you're prompted by these typical activities, and then there's like a section for like instances, and then you can type in the instances of what's going on in your organization or another person's organization or in your life or in another person's life, which is related to those typical activities and related to those themes. And it's fine, like, yeah, I get it. You could create software that does that, and for some people I think that could be a benefit. I tried that process with hundreds and hundreds of people, and I didn't get the results I was expecting. So I've had to continually change things, move things, arrange things until it becomes something that is more relevant to the behaviors that people are exhibiting in their everyday work life. So yeah, I had a problem with like listing just a list of resources. I had a problem with just a list of like motivating purposes. Um, I found a so inventiveness I was able to add directly to the MVP of Arrowhead. State styles and state drive. I combined them to with it's an idea of like a performance review. I mean, tendencies is basically a performance review. In addition to the performance review of like what styles are you like, how automated are your processes, how much effort do you have, and how much success do you have? So that's those two. Then tendencies is also asking you to can you define the purpose of what's motivating people? And like if we don't have enough people that have the right purposes, then we need to change people out because we need people who are really driven for with these specific types of purposes in order to get more success. And then do they also have the capability of understanding like this inventiveness? Can they get from like idea to IPO? Do they have the skill set? Do they understand the process? So yeah, I mean, but that's a huge, that's a huge concept for people to get um, on their first day. It takes a while. So the idea that I'm trying to create is like how do you build the right muscles so that people they develop the right skill set in order to then like add I want to add to this. I want to help people to develop a basic skill set. So for example, let's jump back into this app. So you jump into the app and let's go the other direction. So rather than talking about what I was talking about yesterday or the last time, let's talk about this. So if you're a CEO and like you want your influence to grow, if you're a politician and you want your influence to grow, if you're an introvert and you want to start making more friends, like the people who are really successful are generally people who like other people and are willing to work with other people and are interested in other people and find ways to communicate well with other people. So the whole concept of synergies is that there's there's basically four directions. There's your customers, you're working with customers, then you have your providers, your providers are working with you, and then you have your team. And then maybe there's some other synergies that are can also connect. So your influence, your strength is like you have to have more customers, which means more sources of revenue. You have to have more providers, meaning your company needs more services. You need to hire more people. You can see the influence is growing. Your organization is growing. How does it grow? It grows with synergies. It grows with your customers. How can we better connect, work with, serve our customers? How can we better connect, serve, help, aid our providers? How can we better work with each other within the organization so it grows? as you do that. That's a CEO mindset. Because if you're working in a department, you're not necessarily thinking about like, how do I grow? Because you're thinking about how do I accomplish tasks, right? So that's the other direction, and that's what I was talking about in my last video. If you're already on a team, then you have a project, and then if you have a project, then the question is, can you like talk about the vision of your project? And then here, so I have an objective in mind. Yes, I don't have an objective in mind. So if you have an objective in mind, we went through this the other day, then we're going to be able to list your objectives. After you list your objectives, then that's going to create your scoreboard. The scoreboard, so objectives are like milestones. Your scoreboard is once you fulfill all of the tasks, that means you've accomplished the objective. Well, the issue is like, if we jump back into Tom's book, that scoreboard, that idea of an objective, it's talking about building scenarios and then choosing plan and then performing action. So choosing plans is the when you define an objective, you're choosing a plan. And then when you perform the activities in the scoreboard, that means you're performing the action. And then when you change the status, you're starting to go down the process of recognizing the outcomes. Now, when you decide you want to create a new objective, then you're probably going to have to start fostering some reuses. You're going to look at what did we accomplish from our last objective, our last milestone, and then how are we going to like measure what we actually accomplished in our last milestone? And then how can we use what we accomplished and our understanding of what was accomplished and the amount of work that was needed in order to accomplish that outcome to then go into our what? So then we start to build scenarios again. Building scenarios is brings us back to this step here. I have an objective in mind. So the question, if the answer is no, then we have to build scenarios. And then building scenarios is I use a two-step process. One is a brainstorming process, and then one is selecting the endeavor. The brainstorming process is a subset of the state inventiveness checklist. And then choosing which one you're going to do out of the potential objectives is a, a subset of state impact. Now you can see state impact. You use state impact to see if you actually accomplished the impact that you thought you would accomplish when you made the decision about that endeavor or that objective. But then down here, you also use state impact here when you're making a choice about which plans will have the kind of impact that you want. So exactly, we have the same word choose. And as I said, it's a subset of state impact. So I'm using state impact and then I use the word choose, which is directly from his book. When I did it, I didn't realize that it was the same word. And inventiveness is, I mean, what's the difference between inventiveness and brainstorming? Brainstorming is what? It's coming up with new ideas, and inventiveness is coming up with new ideas. So that's the purpose of the application so far as I've designed it so far. The question is, how many of Tom's checklists do I have represented in this application? This process, this circular process. You see, so here's the app. Like if you have an objective, then you go here. After you talk about the objective, then you're able to create the scoreboard. After all of the after all of the tasks in the scoreboard have been accomplished, then you're going to go down to here where you're going to consider inventiveness, meaning what should the objective be next? So I guess that means I need to create like another. Oh, I can't do it on this account. I can only do it on my other account. So it means you have to create another line that goes from here and then down to create a new objective. Or I guess it should go to here. Okay. So I'm going to move this line so that it goes to here and then it's the yes or no. That's a better feedback loop than the other one. Anyways, but that's what it is. You can see it here. So the idea is that every project has a vision. And to accomplish the vision, you have to complete objectives. And you complete objectives through the scoreboard. Now, this idea of touch base, it's interesting because When you go to Tom's thing here, it's like state purposes is talking about, do you have the right people doing the right job? And I would say that touch base is another way to make sure that you have the right people doing the right job. Touch base, it helps you to deal with state styles, it helps you to deal with state purposes, it helps you to deal with state drive, it helps you to manage inventiveness. So it's like a shortcut to tendencies. Tendencies is a huge concept. Touch base is a much simpler concept of motivation. Why? Because if you're a manager and you're working with people, then if you can just have this little touch base meeting. So, what are you working on? What are you going to do today? What do you need help with? What are some potential sources of assistance? Can we update the status? Do we need to add or delete a task? Is there a change to the timeline? I think that this is a simplified version, like one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 questions, and I can figure out like, is there a problem with us working in this objective? Is our objective going in the right direction? Right? Because the question is, can I update a status? That's talking about the scoreboard. Can I add or delete a task? That's talking about the scoreboard. Is there a change to the timeline? Okay, that's also talking about the scoreboard. All right. And if they're like, and then what's these other ones? Is there like, is there some, okay, so what are you going to do today? And what are you working on? Maybe you say something that's not on the scoreboard. If you're doing something that's not on the scoreboard, or if you think there's something that needs to be on the scoreboard that's not on the scoreboard, you can go back to objectives. So this is a task-based approach to success, and doing daily follow-up and continually talking to the people who are doing the task, going back, going back, going back. Hey, do you need help? Do you need some empowerment? Do you need a tool? Do you need, what's going on? How is it possible that we can get the job done? And if you're constantly having problems with that person, issue, then most likely there is an issue with state purposes, meaning that their motivations, the things which they are naturally good at and the things which they're interested in, are not aligned with the project. And I talked to some sales managers and they said, like, there's nothing you can do if your salespeople are not motivated. Get rid of them. Hire the right people, because there's no programs that help people. You just have to get people to start doing the work that they really love to do, and then they'll start doing the work. If the person doesn't love doing the work, there's nothing you can do. And I mean, yeah, I mean, Fogg's motivation model, it tells us that yeah, there are some things you can do, a facilitation trigger, or you can do a spark trigger. But from experience, talking to a really experienced managers, sales managers particularly, they're just like, nah, don't waste your time. Just find people who are motivated, and then those guys will get the job done for you. So that's why I just took the shortcut rather than like doing like 4 different, 5 different checklists. The shortcut is just do a daily touch base. And within a week or two, if you can never update a status and all you're ever doing is running into problems and they aren't able to develop, like figure out what the potential sources are to solve that problem, and they're just not getting anything done, then switch it out. Like if it was a car, if your alternator is broken, you just get a new alternator. Is that what it's called? Alternator? I mean, what's the point? If the engine is not fast enough, you got to switch out the engine. That's just the fact. And there's no point in developing these like really insane methodologies at this level of operation. Remember that we're talking about project management. This app is about project management. It's helping people to build the right muscles. I want people to build the muscle of understanding what the vision is, having a deep understanding about what the vision is, and that you have to achieve these objective milestones. And then this is the scoreboard for how you're actually going to achieve those objectives. And through daily follow up, you're going to be able to change these statuses, and you're going to be able to make some small changes in the task list and maybe some small changes in the personnel list to eventually accomplish the objective. And then when you want to know, like, we're not sure what the objective is. All right. So then here's another path where we're going to do one of Tom's checklist, state inventiveness, figure out what are some potential objectives that we can work towards, and then select one. All right. So that this whole thing here, it represents quite a few of Tom's checklists, but it's way dumbed down, simplified into some basic project management behaviors. Now, the issue that I had with like state synergies, for example, is that state synergies, like I was saying, it's more of a CEO level. It's like it's not a project management idea. It's more of like how do you grow an organization? And when you're thinking about growing an organization, we're not talking about the vision of a project. We're talking about the vision of like a business, a company. We're talking about a much higher level um, vision. And then when we talk about like the team composition, when you start to bring people together, so this is also like we're still at the bottom here talking about potential. So the third level is guiding interactions. Guiding interactions, all right, so that's about state teamwork. And that's like getting the right people on the right teams. And as a project manager, it's not necessarily going to be your job to put the teams together. Yeah, okay. So it depends on what the project is. But in general, like you already have team members, they kind of already have jobs. Like usually the objectives are pretty clear. There's not a lot of wiggle room. And also, all the people have already been hired. And if you need one more person or two more people, you generally know who that's going to be. So what I'm talking about when I say state teamwork is a much higher level. So at the vision, in the same concept that I'm trying to express with how an organism grows through connecting with those or different types of synergies over time, it's also helpful if you can take those synergies and then also like define them more clearly. So there's a checklist in Tom's book called State Teamwork, and then it kind of explains like how do you define the members of the team, what those members are trying to achieve, how can they reuse the results of the endeavor, and like what kinds of personas then like if it's like a manager, then the personas meaning like how who else is on their individual team. Maybe the team composition, you're talking about departments, right? So if we talk about team composition in terms of like an organization, you have a company, and then how many different departments do you need? And then those departments are going to have some like sub category. We can call those personas. And what is the work that each of these people do in order to achieve the outcomes and the reuses of what that team member is supposed to do in order for the team to work together to, which then brings you back to the concept of synergies. So synergies is like the macro, and then the team composition through state teamwork is a micro. These ones go together. And then also we got performance. So as I was mentioning, performance is I what I did with performance was I took the state styles checklist, meaning your level of automation, and I took the state drive checklist, meaning your level of effort and your level of successfulness, and I combined them to make some small few questions to think about how you could understand performance a little bit better. And I decided not to put that in the project management section of this little application. It could go in there, but it's not exactly project related. You could say that it is project related because you could do a performance review on how well people are working within this project. But as I said, with the with the touch base, you're going to very quickly figure out if people are performing because you're going to be talking to them every single day. You're going to be asking them these questions, and over time, if there isn't a status change and if there's no change to the work, then you have to make a change to the personnel. So that's why I decided, no, we don't need to worry about performance. We just need to follow that process, and people will get weeded out. But from like a HR perspective or from a CEO or founder perspective, you need to think about performance because when you're starting to do the hiring, you need to understand how people are performing. And then when you were looking at see, look, so we got the three synergies, and then we got the team composition, meaning we go more into detail about which people are in the organization. Now we can start thinking about the performance of the different pieces of the organization. So this is all like founder level, CEO level. This is upper level management thinking. That's why I just wrote this like this arrow that goes the other direction because this is a separate branch of the application, and I haven't designed that yet. The project management aspect of the app, which leaves what? Which leaves like which leaves resources and what we didn't talk about assumptions. So state progress overall, I feel like this, like as you can see, there's kind of like a loop here. So you take your resources and then you take the reuses, and then you throw them in with your resources, and then you make sure that you're defined properly your motivations, and you put your people into a team, and then you look at the assumptions in the market and what are the assumptions you have based on like what kind of data do you have, and you build some scenarios. But a lot of the time, you don't really need to look too deep. Like, how, are you going to analyze your data? Is that the process that you want to go through? See, that's why I created this online course, because the thing is that the very first thing that we talk about in this course is these functions of an organization. And see the hands on this right hand side, this is about project management. A lot of it is like the project management app is all connected to this. And then making decisions, the CEO level, the manager level, the eyes, the heart, the vision of the organization. That's that left hand side of the Mira whiteboard I was just showing you. But then when you go into the data, like what's the process of analyzing data? How do we find data? How do we create insight from data? How do we create knowledge from data? How do we analyze what data is good, good quality, bad quality, useful, not useful? How do we do that? So Tom has like a checklist to take you through the process of thinking about data in order to make decisions. He also has that checklist about resources, listing resources. What do we need? What do we got? And then he also has that other one about purposes, like what kind of motivations are we going to need, and what kind of people and what kind of motivations are they going to need in order to get the things done that they need to do. That's all kind of area, like analyst, coaching and analyzing. So, and that's why I jump into this idea right away. So what I'm seeing is that this application is taking on that same structure. Most of the people in the world are hands. And so I created this hands-based project management app. And then on the other side, you also have lots of CEOs and top level managers who also need to be thinking in this way. And then you got the brainiacs that you see. So we got the purposes, the assumptions, data, we got resources. These are all elements. See, the purposes, it breaks down the elements of motivations that motivate people, that motivate purposes. And then data, it breaks it down on like how should you be collecting and defining and working with data. And then resources is like what are all the different types of resources? These are the elements. And it's like really hard to put that into an app. That's why I put it in this color. I just leave it up there so I don't have to think about it right now. It's kind of hanging up there. Maybe I'll find a way to incorporate it somehow, but I just needed to put it out of mind, out of sight. And this is like just trying to understand, is this in the app or is this not in the app? So that's why I put it over here. It's like a standalone experience. And to help me to rule out and figure out like exactly what is the structure, what is the process of the app, what is the overall workflow, how does that relate to the way people actually do work? So here you go. So it covers state progress, meaning the overall cycle is called state progress. Inventiveness, which is here when you don't exactly know what milestones you should be working toward in order to accomplish the project. State impact, which is here, which is like um, how to choose. Also, state synergies. The idea that I was just saying about customers and providers and colleagues and other synergies. That's also in this question here. It's actually in there. There's an element of it in there. Teamwork. I would say teamwork. So the state teamwork is here. There is an element of the state teamwork here in the scoreboard because you're going to be assigning specific people to specific tasks. Um, what else we got in here? Performance. Yeah, like I said, performance, because of the touch base, the performance is gonna be obvious over like a 2-week, 1-month period of time. If people aren't able to do the work that they're supposed to do, if this status never changes, then that's not gonna happen. Alright, so then we can go into, like, purposes. That was the same idea as performance review. What sorry, this one, purposes, because you're gonna know very quickly if the person is driven to do that type of. And then so then at the end of the day, we have what do we have left is our data and our resources. Is there somewhere that incorporates the idea of data and resources in this application? And yes, to some extent, yes. Here. So what do you need help with and what are some potential sources of assistance? Because like there's no point in looking at a list of resources and there's no real point in looking at like a database or a search engine or like an LLM, because like the question isn't information overload. The question is, what's the problem we're trying to solve? What do you specifically need help with? And once we understand the problem, then we can figure out what are the potential sources of assistance, and then we can figure out what kind of data and resources do we need. So it incorporates those concepts, but within an actual workable, functional process. So there you go. There was another thing I kind of want to talk about. I don't think I'm going to talk about it today, but it's related to what he decides to talk about. You know, no, it's not. Wix is a Calgary company. I'm from Calgary. Anyways, what this dude is talking about is the bags under his eyes. And when he finishes talking about that, then he talks about rules. So in the last video I made, I talked about like how you need to create a project requirements document. And then this guy, what he talks about is like when you're actually starting to do the coding, you need to create rules. So there's this thing called rules, and the rules are what help you to help the cursor to decide how it's going to understand your prompts. And well, Tom sent me a video, and it was to a really interesting YouTube channel. It's like a coding language that like nobody's heard about. And inside of this YouTube page, I found this one video, and it had some like philosophy for coding. It's like it was so interesting. Um, I don't know, did I write it in my cursor somewhere? But I guess there was some philosophy about like how you should write code. There were already rules. There's some historical figure in the coding world who created rules. I haven't heard anyone mention this guy or his rules. But anyways, so I guess in the next video we're going to talk about rules. Thanks for joining me on Space Between Ideas. I'm Blaine Gates, and we'll catch you next time.